across many African countries has shown that philanthropy has the most impact when it works within an ecosystem. That includes the private and the public sector. Philanthropy is most effective when it's playing a catalytic role, facilitating collaboration between the private and the public sectors. In philanthropy cannot try to replicate what can be done effectively and efficiently by the private sector. Neither should philanthropy delve into areas which are obligation of governments. Ours is to focus on how to cut solutions that make us impactful and help us to leapfrog in development. Now, I'll give the first example is our Cholera Elimination Secretariat. This is how we supported the cholera elimination efforts in Zimbabwe. In 2008, the disease infected over 100,000 people and caused more than 4,000 deaths. And 10 years later, we found ourselves as also facing the cholera crisis. But in 2018, there were 10,000 infections and 69 deaths. Now, what is it that happened? Now, we tackled this ancient disease. It's a disease of poverty. But we did not try to do it alone. Neither did we just deploy our resources led primarily by our feelings and emotions and the urgency of the need. Rather, what we did was we listened carefully to what the government's focus and priority was. We listened to global organizations that are focused in cholera elimination, like the World Health Organization. And also, we also observed what other partners who arrived on the scene before we did were also doing and how they were deploying their investments. So we found that at a global level, there are countries that are facing similar challenges as we are, and that they had long-term plans to eliminate the disease by 2028. Now, to support our efforts, we used our catalytic funding as philanthropists to help the government to understand the importance of having a roadmap and developing a strategy that would enable us to get on a road to elimination. Through our convening and catalytic influence, we brought together players from the communities, from the public and the private sectors to work together towards the common long-term vision and goal of elimination. The second example I want to give is Vision 2050. Now, this example speaks to the economy, which is captured in what we call Vision 2050. Our vision is to see Zimbabwe and other African countries become upper middle income economies by the year 2050. Now, remember, having a vision for a nation is not just the job of a government. It's the job of every citizen. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our children, we owe it to our communities, we owe it to future generations. Now, through a partnership with Legatum Institute, we developed a document that outlines what it takes across the different sectors and industries to move Zimbabwe from being a $21 billion economy to a $250 billion economy. Using this Vision 2050 document, we are investing in conversations with young people to talk about how we can collectively work together to get there. Now, typically, this is left to governments, but with the enormity of the issues, we need to come together. We decided it's important to come together across society, young and old, put aside our political differences and engage not only at home, but also the diaspora in order to discuss a future that we want and a future that we desire. We have numerous people with experience and exposure, and we have the technology that allows us to have these deep conversations and to be able to create the future that the young people are waiting for, and instead of leaving it all to politicians. Now, beyond conversations, we have also seen young people taking a keen interest in their future through agriculture and engaging in food production. And we call this climate smart agriculture. Zimbabwe is very blessed in that it has a relatively, simple, uncomplicated people. I promise you we are simple and uncomplicated. Also, we have very simple ways in which to secure land for agriculture. And through our traditional leaders, So by investing in training young people to become more food secure through a smart, climate smart agricultural practices, we have found a sweet spot in not only creating an important interest in food security, but getting young people engaged in food production. In the last farming season, we held a successful pilot where we trained 233 people who produced 293 tons of maize, which contributed to individual household food security and to the national granary. Now, this was a pilot. Over the next 3 years, we plan to scale the project to train 300,000 households and to impact 1.8 million people. Through this initiative, we are partnering with a co-founder, one of our global philanthropists who has been extremely generous. We've also partnered with the government through the Ministry of Agriculture and also strong partnership with the private sector in order to support access to inputs, training, and ensure sustainable impact on the communities that are involved. The third example I would like to share with you is one to do with leadership. Among Africa's many challenges, such as high unemployment rates, brain drain, crippling economic conditions, leadership, or rather the lack of visionary leadership, remains one of the biggest challenges for the African continent. The continent's long-term success is dependent on strong and inspired servant leaders. Solving our challenges, innovative thinking, dynamic and enterprising leaders who can use 21st century skills to create real impact. Now, this is what we seek to achieve. It's what we call our Star Leadership Academy, which was founded in 2019. Our vision is to develop a pipeline of leaders and to raise a generation of value-based young people committed to transforming the continent. At Star Leadership Academy, we created an intensive educational and experiential learning program that provides African students with critical leadership skills that improves their cultural awareness and builds a commitment to servant leadership and to national building. Through our rich curriculum, we teach students on how to know and to love the land. As they travel across the country and learn about conservation, they learn about agriculture, they learn to love the communities, the rural communities, where much of our livelihood comes from. We invest in 21st century skills, teaching them to code, exposing them to the corridors of power and influence, such as the Parliament, the World Bank, and large listed companies. We have trained 157 young people between the age of 16 and 17 from 5 African countries, and they participate. We take them out of school after they've completed their O-level certificates. And these are high performers. They have on average 8 to 12 A's in various academic subjects. So they go on a year-long program at Star Leadership Academy. We have 2 campuses. One is in a rural setting and one in an urban setting. And then we put together mentors, amazing mentors from different parts of Zimbabwe and different parts of the world to inspire, to educate, and to direct them into loving the continent and wanting to learn, but learning with a vision and a purpose. As we take a long-term view to building towards Vision 2050, we are intentional not only about the future that we desire to see, but also the kind of people that we want to see lead us, leading us in various industries on the political front, economic development, socially and culturally as well. As I conclude, I want to highlight that if we are to effectively reimagine the future of African development, we cannot ignore the power structures that exist between local African civil society organizations and traditional development donors. Now, aid cuts by the UK government have provided us a real example of this dynamic, as a cut of £150 billion in funding to development has impacted the lives and livelihoods of more than 100 million people across 22 African countries who are at risk from these debilitating yet preventable diseases. We therefore must consider what is being very much referred to as decolonization of aid. Now, a report conducted by Clearview Research and sponsored by the Vodafone Foundation, titled Barriers to African Civil Society, Building the Sector's Capacity and Potential to Scale Up, you can find this on the internet, found that the US Foundation funding to Africa jumped more than 400% from $288.8 million in 2002 to $1.5 billion in 2021. Most of this funding, however, went to organizations headquartered outside of Africa. So which means the power and the decision was handed back to people who don't live on the continent, who cannot identify with the pain points of the problems that they are trying to solve. Now, while more than 95% of the African civil society organizations are largely dependent on foreign donor funding, it is a worrying trend. The report also highlights that this dynamic has created quite a number of barriers for local civil society organizations, which typically limits the sector's capacity building and activity to scale. So some of the barriers include dependence on donor funding with constraining funding approaches and also complex donor language, the lack of trust and various negative perceptions about local civil society or community organizations. They've also highlighted the weak governance and management systems that includes lack of human resources and frameworks that make it difficult to work community organizations. They've also the environments for local civic organizations that have put them at variance, especially with governments across the continent. The next barrier has been the failure by local community or civil society and community organizations to adapt to fluid contexts and be agile in building and putting their systems in place. And then lastly, the power dynamics that flourish as a result of localization and domestication of international NGOs on the African continent. Now, what are some of the recommendations that are being made? Recommendations include reimagining the donor civil society philanthropy relations in order to create a balance between core and project funding, the importance of building sustainability for local community organizations, local philanthropic organizations, local civil society by strengthening governance structures. Capacity building has to be seen as core to partnership and collaborations that we have not previously really witnessed. The second recommendation is improving civil society and private sector relationships. To quote one of the respondents, the private sector must it's encouraged to pursue and support controversial issues because they speak to the vision of the country that we want to live in. Thirdly, civic society and philanthropy must leverage domestic funding sources more effectively. The growth in African sources of funding provides new revenue streams for our community organizations. Another recommendation is on leadership and succession, that it's important for local NGOs to make their governance and leadership strong, robust, and strengthen those leadership structures. I believe that the subject and the issue about decolonization of aid is an opportunity for us as African entrepreneurs, as philanthropists, and also as the private sector to step in and create an environment that uses financial resources and in a more efficient way, flattens decision-making processes, and also allows us to be very close to the communities that we are trying to invest in for development and impact. I just want to conclude by saying that some of you might start thinking, maybe thinking about going into philanthropy, or others may be thinking of scaling. I want to say that the sky is the limit, that there is nothing wrong with starting small, that today at Higher Life, we are celebrating 25 years since we started in 1996, when we only had 2 members of staff and hardly any money. And we started on the bonus that my husband had been given at work to start this organization. Today, celebrating that we have over 180 employees working out of 5 countries and on 2 continents. I want to also conclude by encouraging us to take a long-term view so that we forego the sweet pleasures and moments that the short-term view sometimes brings us. And thirdly, that it's important for us to collaborate. We cannot achieve anything on our own. We must work with the communities that we serve. We need to find common platforms and grounds with the governments that lead us, and also make sure as the private sector, I know companies like competition, but when it comes to philanthropy, to identify ways in which we can co-fund projects and challenges, again, to bring positive impact in our communities. Thank you once again to the ACT Foundation, the organizers of this conference. I look forward to many more conversations that will follow in the next 2 days, and encourage everybody, please stay connected, participate in the discussions, which are so critical for the development of our continent. Thank you so much. God bless you mightily.
Our keynote speaker for 2021, thank you for the enlightenment that you've brought. Thank you for the recommendations that you've made. Please, in the chats, put your hand claps, put your woohoos. Let her see our thank yous from all of us from across the world. Thank you so much, ma'am. Some of the recommendations you mentioned, you said sustainability and strengthening governance structures. You also talked about civil society and private sector relationship improvement and leveraging domestic fundings. Some of these, in fact, all of these that I noted, go back to the soft skill, the ability for us to get to network with each other, which is a soft skill that a lot of leaders overlook. So please, in the chat, once again, appreciate our keynote speaker for the enlightenment brought to us. Our next speaker will now take us on this exciting discussion on the topic, the all-important topic of networking and building connections within the social sector, which, of course, our keynote speaker had highlighted as being very important. The title of the next session is Networking for Good, Win with People. It is my honor and privilege to welcome someone who is vast in this regard. She's a LinkedIn visibility coach and lead consultant at the Inspired by Glory Academy. Welcome, Dr. Glory Edozian, as she comes up right now. Hello, Glory. Good to see you. Can you hear me? Hi, Glory. Glory is one of our volunteers at the ACT Foundation, whom we're so proud of and honored to have with us. So remember, whilst Dr. Glory Edozian is speaking, use the Q&A chats. The Q&A box is just here at the bottom of the screen. You can click
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Glory. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Hello, good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, please. Please put it in the chat that you can hear Glory so that she can respond to us. I'll chat from here. Said yes.
Okay, fantastic. I've just gotten a message that you can hear me. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited to be able to join this breakfast dialogue. It says check my speaker. So my volume is turned up to the highest. Am I okay? Can I proceed? Okay, it says please go on. All right, thank you so much. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Gloria Edozian, and I am a LinkedIn visibility coach and personal branding expert. I'm here to talk to you this morning about how to network. Networking is one of my favorite things to talk about, so I'm super excited. But first of all, thank you so much to the organizers of this conference for inviting me to speak. I always enjoy speaking about networking and helping professionals like yourself to learn how to network to achieve your goals. So I'm super excited to be here. So I thought about what is the best thing I could leave with you with today. And what came to my mind was how to network at this breakfast dialogue and beyond. So it's not just about networking today, but networking after today. And so I thought, okay, let me start with a story. So the very first person that I saw, I hope everyone can still hear me on. The very first person that I saw networking effectively, believe it or not, was actually my father. Yes. When I was a teenager, there was no one to look after myself and my brother at home. So my dad actually took us for a conference that he was organizing with his office. And so when we got there, he put us at the back of the room. And then I saw my dad. My dad is not a very social person. He wasn't the type that always had parties or friends over. But I saw him do something very instructive, right? I saw him, he went out, he went to the crowd and he was talking to people. He went to the front of the room, he was collecting cards. And I just thought, this is a bit showy, this is a bit too much. And it was just weird. But after I saw him, after he would take a card, he would write at the back of the card, he would make notes at the back of the card. And then when we got home, I saw him put the cards very neatly into his briefcase. And so I was like, Daddy, what are you doing? And he just laughed. But now I understand that what my dad was doing was actually working the room. And that is something that is so important about networking. You see, the mistake a lot of us make, right, when it comes to networking is that we go for a conference like this, especially now that everything is virtual, we are, in our corner or we are in a room and we are not connecting with people. We talk to only the people that we know. We say hello to the people that we know. We don't move around. We don't connect. But that doesn't help you. When you come for an event like this, what you are meant to do is talk to people, connect to people that you don't already know, right? So how do you do that effectively? How do you network effectively? I thought possibly to help today, I'm going to share a story. Okay, there's a bit of background noise. I don't know if I hope everybody can still hear me. Okay. So I thought I'll tell you a story about how I work effectively and the power and show the power of networking for my career and my business. So when I started to transition my business from focusing on entrepreneurs to career women, one of the things I realized, I looked at my network and I was like, I don't really have the people who can help me achieve my goals. Because obviously I wanted to start offering services to career professionals. And I realized I didn't have the people that would help me achieve my goals. So I shared with my friends, I was like, look, I'm looking to meet more career women, more women in senior level management. So my friend sent me one day, randomly, my friend sent me this event. She was like, oh, this looks like something that would be interesting for you. And it was an event for senior women. So I looked at all the bios of the speakers. It was like a cross mentoring event. I looked at all the bios of the speakers, the mentors, all of them. I said, okay, I knew the people I wanted to target. Specifically, I wanted to speak to people who were already supporting women in one way or the other, because I understood that they would know and they would understand my what I did, the fact that I work with women, they would understand that. So when I got to the event, I created my pitch. I knew how I was going to introduce myself. I was not going to introduce myself as founder of Inspired by Glory Academy, because that doesn't mean much to anybody, right? But I was going to introduce myself based on the value that I offer. So I went, I introduced myself to people, I met different people. And long story short, one of the people in that conference gave me 2 projects that tripled the revenue of my business that particular year. Another person is still in contact of mine today. And regularly, in fact, this last month, I scored clients from her just last month. So this is the power of networking. Not only does it help you to attract funding and achieve your business goals, but it helps you to build credibility in your sector, because people get to know about the great work that you do, right? People get to know about you and they can talk about you in rooms. They can tell you about opportunities before they become public. So how do you leverage and how do you use the power of networking to achieve? So I'm going to share some tips with you. After I share these tips, hopefully we'll have time for Q&A. I was told that I had only 15 minutes and I want to make sure that I maximize time. So the first tip I want to share with you is understand your goals. What are the things you would like to achieve in your career or your business? So if you're a founder, if you work in the development sector, what are the things that you would like to achieve? Now, it's very important that you understand your goals, because this helps you to be consistent. And this helps you to understand who you need to connect with. A lot of times people are networking, they just say, oh, it's time for, especially when we used to have physical events, or even now when we do breakout rooms for networking, right? People are like, oh, they say we should network and we're just connecting with people. But if you understand your goals, okay, this is what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to get funding. I'm trying to attract potential board members. I'm trying to attract international awareness for the work that I'm doing. I'm trying to advance in my career, whatever the case is. Understand your goals and then make sure that you are attending events, even after today, where the people who can help you achieve your goals are. So that's the first thing. The second thing that you need to be able to do is understand how to introduce yourself. I see this many times, right? People just introduce themselves. Oh, my name is Timitope, and I work in Save the Children, or something like that. You know, that really doesn't demonstrate your value. So there's a difference, right? So imagine if I came here and I introduced myself and I said, "Hello, I'm the founder of PLHIV Access." Now, everyone was like, oh, okay, nice. I've heard about your organization. You guys do well. But imagine if I came and I said, hello, my name is Glory, and I help people living with AIDS, especially the most vulnerable, get access to life-saving medicine and also help them reduce barriers to accessing healthcare. Immediately, that's a very different way to introduce yourself, because immediately the people that will want to support you, the people that are attracted to the kind of work that you do, will immediately gravitate towards you, right? Then people start asking you questions. So I'll give an example. Before, I used to introduce myself as the founder of Inspired by Glory Academy. I mean, that's the truth. That's who I am. But I realized that that wasn't helping me. But the minute I said, oh, I help people build visibility on LinkedIn, people immediately say to me, oh, my LinkedIn profile has been a long time since I've updated it. Oh, how do you help people? How do you build visibility on LinkedIn? What are the things, what are the services you offer? When you introduce yourself at networking events, just in a short way, it doesn't have to be something very long, immediately people want to connect with you because they understand your value. And even if they can't help you, they remember you. And let's say they meet somebody else who can help you. They're like, oh, there's a girl who is dealing with helps people with LinkedIn here. Oh, there's a girl who helps people living with HIV here. That kind of thing, right? So make sure that you're introducing yourself in a way that demonstrates your value. The second thing is work the room. I cannot emphasize this enough. Please don't come for an event and just for a conference like just talk to only people that you know. In fact, before I came today, I checked my LinkedIn and somebody who is attending this conference today had already sent me a LinkedIn request to say, oh, hello, Glory. I see that you're going to be speaking at the Foundation Breakfast Dialogue. It will be great to connect with you after. And I was so excited. Like, this is what people are meant to do. So look at the speakers who are going to be speaking today at this conference, those that are offering master classes. Connect with them on LinkedIn, send them LinkedIn messages with connect requests. Hello, I was at the ACT Foundation breakfast. I saw you. I'm looking forward to listening to you speak tomorrow, or I see that you're speaking today, or I listened to you speak and I thought what you said about X, Y, and Z was super interesting. It would be great to connect to people before and then also during the event. Do you see some familiar names, maybe people that you're aware of their work? Send them messages, chat with them, right? Chat with them, send them a message. Oh, hello, I've been a fan of your work or the work of your organization. Oh, hello, my name is Glory. In fact, sometimes when I use Zoom to for conferences or I join conferences on Zoom, I'm always very active in the chat. I'll always say, hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Glory. I'll always introduce myself. I'm happy to connect with everybody here. If somebody makes an interesting point, I will always, send them a message to say that point was very interesting or that was a super interesting question. So make sure that you are connecting with people during the event. In fact, something that my dad used to say to me a while ago, something my dad used to say to me when I told him that I would go, maybe I went for this conference or I'm attending this conference, he always say to me, did you ask a question? And I thought, please, what kind of busybody nature is that one? Asking a question. I'm like, no, but that is the way that you become visible. Right? This is the way that people know you. Like, oh, that girl asked an interesting question. And when you ask a question, introduce yourself. So people get to see you and get to want to connect with you. Also, very important, please, that you at events, going for physical events, that you smile, that you seem approachable. I know that the world is very stressful, but don't carry all the weight of the shoulder in your hands. Look approachable. It's easier that way for people to say hello to you. Also, make sure that you connect to people after the event. Now, I personally use a platform like LinkedIn to stay connected to people because it's so easy. 3 times a year, LinkedIn will send you a message about your contact. It will tell you when is their birthday. It would tell you about their work anniversary. It would tell you if they've been shown on the news. It would also tell you if they've been promoted. So I remember one time I went for a conference in South Africa. This is like 5 years ago. And I met a leader in tax for Africa at that event. And obviously, I don't do anything in tax, but I met him. It was an international conference, and I just thought, oh, it'd be great to introduce myself to another Nigerian. So I went to meet him. I was like, oh, hello, I'm a Nigerian. It's great to see you here, all of that. And we swapped cards. Now, when we came back, I added him on my LinkedIn profile. And every year, LinkedIn would send me a message, and it would say, today is so and so's birthday. And I was sending him a message, happy birthday, sir, blah, blah, blah. And he would always reply, oh, thank you so much, all of that. 5 years later, 5 years later, I was able to invite him to the conference. In fact, he has spoken at 2 of my conferences since I met him. That is how you preserve. LinkedIn makes it super easy to preserve relationships, right? And to follow up relationships, because a lot of times we have issues, we have struggles with following up with connections that we meet. So please, all the people that you meet today, make sure that you add them on LinkedIn. The next thing that I want you to also learn to do is offer value. You see, the currency of networking is generosity, not greed, right? The currency of networking is generosity and not greed. So how are you offering value to people in your network? Do you know somebody who is trying to achieve something, trying to maybe access funds, or is looking for a board member, and you have access to people who are also looking to volunteer on NGO boards? Connect them, right? Find out what people, maybe they're trying to connect to somebody who you have access to. Make sure that you are generous to your network. Now, the reason why I always emphasize this is that when you learn how to be generous to people in your network, you find it easier to ask, because you realize that it's not, if I'm able to leverage my network to support other people, then it is easier for other people to help me, right? Okay, so I've been told I have 3 minutes and I'm rounding up. Stay connected to people. One of the great ways to stay connected in this virtual world is something I call coffee chats, right? Coffee chats. What are coffee chats? Coffee chats are like 15 to 30 minute virtual conversations where we are catching up. Oh, so we just recently met. So tell me a bit about your work. What are you trying to achieve? And I share my work as well as what I'm trying to achieve without any agenda. This is a great way to build stronger connections and to follow up with people that you meet. And finally, a great way to network. In fact, what I tell people is that content sharing is a great way to network. What does that mean? Share the things you've learned in this conference. Share about your work. Use a platform like LinkedIn to share about topical issues happening in your industry, what your perspectives are. Build your thought leadership on LinkedIn. What this does is it helps you to build a network of people that are interested in the work you do. And that also helps you to build your network. Okay, and that is me done. I hope I've been able to offer you salient tips that you can use at this conference and beyond. I'm happy to answer any questions if we have time for that.
Okay, bring me back up. Hey, Glory.
Any questions? I'm not sure if they're a moderator, if there are any questions, or if there's no time for questions. Please, somebody should just let me know in the chat.
For the great insights from Dr. Glory Edozian. Amazing work you've done. Thank you. Those are very clear tips given. Thank you, Dr. Glory. And should you have questions for Dr. Glory, it's not too late. You can still put your questions in the Q&A box, and we will ensure we respond to them on our social media platforms at @ActFoundation_. Thank you once again, Dr. Glory Edozian, for your interventions this year. When the trivia poll does come up in the chats, please respond to it, because the questions will be about our history, the history of our breakfast dialogue over the years. One of you, our esteemed participants, will be selected to win a prize. So keep looking out for that link in the chats anytime today or tomorrow. Shortly, we'll move ahead to our first panel session, which is on innovative approach to socio-economic development. Please remember that we have many other exciting things after the panel. We have 3 exclusive masterclasses, which are headed by sector experts, as well as our special speed networking session where you can practice what Dr. Glory has just said. So please stay with us till the end. We will now get to our first panel session. It is my utmost pleasure to invite our distinguished panelists for today's discussion on innovative approach to socio-economic development. Welcome with me, our first panelist, Dr. Frank Aswani, who is the CEO, Africa Venture Philanthropy Alliance. We also have with us Professor Joseph Nana, Chief Economist, Development Bank of Nigeria, and Yvonne Fasiro, founder, Adara Empowerment Foundation. Also, welcome with me the moderator for this distinguished panel, who will lead the panel discussion, Maurice Atoki, CEO at African Business Coalition for Health, which is ABC Health. Welcome to our panelists. Madam Moderator, over to you.
Right, good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you all hear me, please?
Clear.
I need somebody to confirm. Right, Frank, thank you so much for that. Good morning, participants, good morning, distinguished panelists. My name is Maurice Atoki. I'm the CEO for African Business Coalition for Health. And I have with me the distinguished panel for this breakfast session. And I will quickly introduce them and also allow us to just go right into action. I have with me Dr. Frank Aswani, is the CEO, Aswani, pardon me. I just pronounced it like a Nigerian now. He's the CEO of Africa Venture Philanthropy Alliance. I have Professor Joseph Nana, Chief Economist, Development Bank of Nigeria, and I have Yvonne Fasiro, founder at Dara Foundation. You're all welcome to this great session. Our topic is innovative approach to socio-economic development. Maybe just before we start, I would like the members of the panel to say one or two things about themselves. And I would like to start with the ladies. Ladies first, Yvonne, do you want to say a few things about who you are and the organization that you represent?
Maurice, good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. I can. We all can.
Perfect. So, Maurice, and thank you very much for having me here. And I want to thank ACT Foundation for organizing what I hope will be a very thought-provoking day and, or rather, a series of events and day. So I'm Yvonne Fasiro. I'm the founder of Adara Foundation. And what we do is being quite vexed about the fact that we've underperformed in our socio-economic development in spite of the resources that we have been given. I mean, particularly the natural resources and the human capital. I decided to set up my foundation in 2016 to address particularly the empowerment of women, because I believe that women and also youth, if well empowered, well equipped in skills, learning how to make businesses, make money, and also manage their health, that they will be the most important contributors to socioeconomic development in Nigeria and in Africa. So that's what drives Adara Foundation. And we've been operating for the last 6 years, and we have almost 20,000 beneficiaries so far. I'm going to stop there so others can speak. But it's a pleasure to be here today.
Profile for this discourse. Thank you so much, Yvonne. Professor Joseph Nana, over to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
It's a bit low. Can you increase your volume, please?
Sure. How about now? Can you hear me now? Any improvements?
It's not still. We can hear you, but it's not loud enough.
Because on my end, the volume is at 95% now, so any louder, I'll be tone deaf. I don't know what could be the problem.
Let's do it.
Okay, Okay, let me just jump right into it.
Go
So
ahead,
I am
Prof.
Joseph.
We will link our ears to.
Okay, so my name is Joseph Nana. I'm the chief economist here at the Development Bank of Nigeria. In this capacity, I oversee the research, monitoring, and evaluation, as well as sustainability units within the bank. I have numerous years of experience in the U.S. mortgage banking, manufacturing, and telco industries before jumping into academia. I served as a professor of business and economics in Oklahoma State. I published immensely in multiple journals, have a current book out right now, Banking in Nigeria, Financing During Turbulent Times. And I'm just happy to be here to shed some light on the state of affairs in Nigeria, and more particularly, how we can use innovative ways to build on the state of the economy. Thank you.
Excellent, Prof. Thank you so much. Very excited to have you. We've heard you speak, and we're even more excited to get your perspectives about this topic we're talking to today. And last but not the least, I would like to invite Mr. Frank Aswani to give his introductions. Frank, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Maurice. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So, hi everyone. My name is Frank Aswani. My name is very easy to remember. It's like Swani Market in Lagos. So no one should struggle to remember my name. I'm the CEO of AVPA, and it's a real pleasure to be here today. Nigeria and Art Foundation are very close to my heart. I'm Kenyan, living in Johannesburg, but I have a daughter with a Yoruba name. She's called Tolani. That shows you of my contact with Nigeria. I've been to Nigeria maybe 60, 70 times in my life. So really proud to be here. AVPA is a network of social investors. And the problem we're trying to solve is how do we mobilize enough capital to address our social investment needs on the continent? And if you use the SDGs as a framework, this continent needs between $500 billion and $1.2 trillion annually between now and 2030 to address that gap. That we don't have in our current social sector on the continent. Our population is young and growing, and our problems are increasing faster than we can mobilize capital. The keynote speaker, and as we know now, aid to Africa is declining. We did a study last year that showed it's gone down by up to 30% in the last 5 years. So where are we going to get money? So what AVP is bringing together deployers of grants, debt, and equity onto one platform for greater collaboration so we can mobilize capital for impact. But I'll speak more to it as we go along.
Thank you so much, Frank. Excellent. And thank you for that background. Thank you for letting us know you're almost Nigerian. So it's great to have you on this panel. I'm going to really try to jump into the questions so that we can maximize some of the remarks and perspectives you want to deliver to the audience. But before that, it's also just to say a bit about who I am. As I said earlier, I am Maurice Atoki. I'm the CEO of an NGO called African Business Coalition for Health, where we galvanize businesses to focus on fostering health outcomes across countries in Africa. That's where we are, that's what we do, and I hope to network as much as possible with each one of you towards the completion of this breakfast session. Like I said earlier, I'm going to jump right in, and I would want Frank to do justice to this first question. And this comes from what we're all particularly saddled with, unfortunately, at a global level, and of course at an African level, and individual countries, of course, that we represent. It's about what COVID-19 has done to the entire continent of Africa and to our respective countries. We know that the economic impacts of the pandemic has been severe. We can say that there are millions of people that have been pushed into extreme poverty, and literally also, hold the fact that perhaps 5 years of progress in fighting poverty has been erased. Frank, to you, where do we start? Where do we begin? What do we do? What strategies can be implemented by both public and private organizations to address some of these challenges? Over to you, Frank.
Thank you, Maurice. So first of all, I think we'll all acknowledge the devastation effects of COVID. It's more so than anything else exposed the great inequality we have in our societies. This has been very clear when we look at, as we shifted some kids online, how many kids we left behind who didn't have access to the internet, for example. It's really demonstrated the lack of sustainable stability within our systems, and especially government funding, for example. We've not been prepared for such a shock ever before. And none of us who was asked a question in an interview 5 years ago, where do you think you'll be in 5 years, got it right. But that's the reality of where we are, is that we are facing a really difficult time. But they always say, never waste a crisis. Because what a crisis does, it enables you to one, innovate, to press the reset button, and to really think about how efficient you've been in managing and utilizing your resources today. And what's very clear is built our economy very fragile foundations. Our economy is heavily aid dependent, and as the shocks hit the donor countries, we've suffered because there hasn't been money coming from the donor countries. Our governments were never prepared with the right reserves to manage this kind of a shock. We are seeing public debt in Africa increasing significantly as governments struggle to mobilize money to try and address some of the shocks happening in their respective countries. So I think, it depends on your perspective. Is a glass half full or half empty coming out of this? Recognizing, yes, that there's a lot of suffering that has happened, but there's massive opportunities for special investors and innovators to really propel Africa in a different direction. We ran a couple of series of webinars in the COVID in 2020, about 20 of them. And we set up communities of practice of people in Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. And it was amazing how in very short times, people innovated immensely. And it just shows you the creativity we have amongst our youth and people on the continent. There are solutions looking at how we can offer content on WhatsApp to help kids who can't access online classes. There was a number of things that happened in healthcare, in distribution. We had an organization from our South Africa community that was set up in 3 months, and they distributed over 250,000 digital vouchers, food vouchers, to people who could not get physical access to food. So the power of the African is not in doubt. The issue we must make sure is how we're going to leverage the lessons learned from COVID to fix the things that we need to fix. We can never go through another pandemic like this without vaccine capacity on the continent, for example. We're struggling to get vaccines because we're dependent on the West for vaccine production. The most important thing is that how do we fail forward through this crisis? How do we manage better? And how do we make that let's sure that the lessons learned are embedded in the way we do things differently going forward?
Absolutely, Frank. I totally agree with you. Thank you for that insight. We must leverage and take advantage of the crisis that Africa is indeed going through right now, and fail forward. As I re-echo, I like that phrase. I'm going to jump to Yvonne right now. And Yvonne, what I want you to do for us and with us, just before I get to Prof, is to tell us a bit about, in the context of this topic, innovative approach to socio-economic development, bearing in mind that it is more than necessary for Africa as a continent to, at this time, focus on localizing its solutions and not necessarily adopting those templates or the solutions that the global community offers. The idea, even when they offer it, is for us to look at it as a precedent, but to domesticate it. In the context of this, I want you to elaborate a bit more about what collective socio-economic development in Africa looks like, and what tools, what infrastructure, what capacity development, capacity building is required for us to get to where we ought to be. Yvonne, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Maurice. So for the sake of context, what we have as our continent is, even before COVID, we were struggling. We were struggling with growing at a rate that would serve our people to become economically viable, especially in larger countries like Nigeria, where we call ourselves oil rich. But if you look at the oil income per capita, or even the expense per capita, or any of those other ratios, you find that we were struggling before So COVID has helped, as Frank said, COVID has helped us, has forced us actually to do a reset and reassess how we can do things. And we've seen a lot of innovations going forward. But it's important for us to understand where we're coming from in that we were coming from a bad situation. COVID made it worse. And we have bad leadership in most of the public sectors across the continent. And then if you layer on the potential area where we can see growth coming from, it is from the low income. It is from the part of our economy where the SMEs and the MSMEs and the SMEs, that is what is going to fuel socioeconomic growth in Africa. And we have served them so far very poorly. So what I think we need to do now is there's no point discussing poor leadership or poor anything else, because as I said earlier, one of the most assets that Africa has is its people. And it's not all of the leaders, if you want to say, who are in the public service. And what we need to do now is strengthen the private sector, particularly the non-commercial private sector, which is where what I call organizations like ACT Foundation. And the reason I say that is, if you look at the SMEs and the MSMEs, which we know are the backbone of socioeconomic development, they've been poorly funded, they've been poorly supported in terms of skills development, etc. Why is that the case? Because there isn't a compelling commercial reason to do that. They're hard to support. That's the truth. So the role that organizations like ACT Foundation play and other non-commercial entities that can fuel economic growth in the way that ACT Foundation does is to provide that much needed support that will create market-creating innovations. We need to think about things that will create new markets, as we saw in COVID, fueled by technology. We need innovations that are going to boost the market operations we have. Again, technology. So we saw retailers going online because they were forced to. We saw people becoming more technology driven. We saw sectors, whether it's healthcare, food, fashion, some of these areas where we commerce, manufacturing, where we saw real innovations coming through out of necessity. The problem that we have is it's still very individual. It's appearing in little pockets, and we need to take a more strategic collective approach on how to fuel development in some of those sectors. So some of the areas in which Frank, I'm sure, will speak a lot about is how do we finance this sector? He's talked about collecting the monies that come into the sector. One of the things that I have been very challenged with, and I have seen, is how do we, and I know I'm not the only one, is that how do we, even when we collect the money, how do we disseminate it into the areas of the economy that will fuel socioeconomic growth? How do we provide the backbone for that, the infrastructure for that? How do we provide the access to the people to say, here, these are the opportunities. This is how you must qualify, and this is how you access it. How do we provide the reporting and analytics around it to give confidence to the people who are providing the financing from wherever it comes? We'll talk about the sources later. How do we give them the confidence that the monies that they have put together in the trust of this process have been adequately utilized? These are some of the areas where we need to start thinking more, and it's not so much about the narrative anymore. The narrative is boring, the numbers, the statistics, enough of that. It's more about how do we change our mindset and start to think differently about our problems? How do we think differently about how we deploy the solutions? And also, how do we then take actions and as a collective to solve some of those problems?
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. And I like the way this conversation is going, because what we're going to hear now coming from Prof is to address a lot of the hows based on his background, what he's doing now. and the fact that we've had previous conversations before now. And I do hear you saying a large chunk of the solutions is definitely going to come from the SMEs. Prof, my next question to you is about these SMEs being a critical force as drivers of economic activity, creation, impact on the GDP across multi-sectors. What innovative frameworks, what is the how that Siobhan has gracefully, asked us here, and strategies that can be deployed to help to build impact, sustainable resilience, and scalability? I hear that a lot. They're in pockets, and we need to scale. How can this various stakeholders contribute to this? Over to you, Prof.
Thank you for the question, Maurice. Hope my volume is now louder. So let me put it to you, let me frame it in this way. Frank and Yvonne has spoken very well in terms of the COVID-19 situation. Even before Nigeria and Africa as a whole, we were kind of in a messed up situation, given that foreign aid had declined significantly, more so now than prior to COVID. We've seen debt profiles rise in all African countries who can source for debt to help boost their respective budgets. But in the end, it boils down to SMEs. Now, as the chief economist at the DBN, our mandate is to finance MSMEs through commercial banks, microfinance banks, merchant banks, and other financial institutions. However, what we've seen actually is that in order to achieve this, capacity building is of paramount importance. Risk sharing is of paramount importance, meaning that we need to have companies who can absorb the risks of the MSMEs to allow willing operators, funders, to actually channel funds that direction. But let me put in this context though. In the US, the interstate highway of the US started in the late 1940s to 1950s by Dwight Eisenhower. The reason the US has a good network of roads is to provide a community of closeness so markets and individuals can meet. Before this happened, SMEs already existed in the US through FDR, Frederick Delano Roosevelt's New Deal in the 1940s. So now, SMEs were already playing a good role. Then what happens next is the next president comes in and now brings them closer to provide access to the markets. I'm saying all of this because let's not worry about what Yvonne said about pointing fingers at the government. The government will kick in as soon as they see a need to key in. That's just the bottom line. Private sector can handle this without government because the government will see an opportunity and say, hey, we can tax these folks now. Let's do that. So they will eventually come in. So for me, in order for access to finance to occur, we have to have a coalition of the willing participants to agree on the framework for capacity building, skills development, and accreditation. When you can accredit these individuals and say they went through these types of trainings, quote unquote, we can now essentially put a higher weight in terms of the credit appraisal process for the credits they're trying to access. Another way is in Ethiopia, you have these psychometric evaluations to assess or the propensity of women or men, what have you, who are willing to repay back their loans. What this implies is, don't worry about the collateral requirements as such, because here in Nigeria, the collateral requirements tends to be very burdensome, very high. I always say, if they had these monies, they wouldn't come for a loan. But here's the deal. We can reorganize the credit appraisal process and put a higher emphasis, a higher weight on the skills training of the business plan, the cash flow regime of their company, and against that, and the psychometric evaluations to say, hey, look, these individuals actually have a greater propensity to repay their loans. Now, if we can achieve this at a critical mass, then I guarantee you government will say, hold up, wait a minute. These individuals are doing something well, and the only way we can key into this is by giving them maybe tax incentives to keep growing, shelter for infancies in their industries, or perhaps build the necessary infrastructure to help push and create some sort of comparative advantage to neighboring countries of trade partners. So there are many ways to skin a cat, but these are just a handful of ways I proposed. Thank you.
The SMEs can do more. The private sector, this multi-stakeholders can do more besides just pointing fingers at the failures of the government. And I do totally agree with you. In fact, you make me to see more of how we seem not to be doing as much as we should be, considering the need for this social economic development that Africa requires. Without belaboring that, Frank, I'm going to come back to you now, and I wanted to talk about something Yvonne mentioned. I'm going to ask you to talk about strategic, multilateral partnerships, the necessity for it, and all of this that we're looking at. In developing this approaches for Africans' socio-economic development, how can organizations partner better? How can they collaborate more to drive collective actions towards accelerating this self-sustaining economic opportunities we talked to? Over to you, Frank.
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, I always tell people we need to fall in love with the problem, not our solutions. If we align behind the problem, then collaboration is so much to do. Too many times we get away with our own solutions, and yet the solution space is an innovative. We could face a problem today thinking our solutions are the best, and together we can come up with something very totally innovative and very different from what each one of us had before. So I think first of all, we need to align on the problem we're trying to solve. So if you look at, once again, the big macro picture around here is we don't have enough money. As both and Yvonne have said, we don't have enough money in our social sector to solve our problems. And the traditional model of depending on aid in a declining resource base, where the UK government has reduced its aid, the US government, Trump did the same. And even the aid that is coming is moving from being typical aid to aid seeking impact and trade in many cases. Where we're going to and the strategic partnership really need to be looking at here is how does the development sector as is today partner with the private sector, where we have almost more than $250 trillion in the capital markets. We just need that a year to solve our SDG financing gap. So it needs, and as Prof has said, we can't solve all problems with old thinking, or new problems with old thinking. We've got to be thinking innovatively. And this is where this whole growth of the innovative financing space is a really interesting space for all of us to be looking into. So I'm sure many of you have heard about the emerging space of things like impact, where we are blending finance between grants and private capital, so we can crowd in more private capital in this space. Those are some of the spaces that are emerging, but the competence to play in this new space is lacking amongst our social investors. We need to learn and grow, but you'll be surprised, Maurice, that if you want to do an innovative financing program in Africa today, you have one institution of learning that can teach you. The whole continent of Africa has only one institution of learning with an innovative financing program, and that's the University of Cape Town. Otherwise, you've got to go to Oxford, Cambridge, Duke, Stanford, and you know how much they'll charge you for that. Come and train 20 people and then, yeah. Exactly. They have no local context. They'll charge you an arm and a leg, come and train 20 people, go away for 6 months. We have no luxury of time. And history will judge us harshly if we waste this crisis. We've got to be thinking about how do we move at speed, scale, to move our content forward faster than we ever have. And the strategic partnership we need to be thinking about is how do we leverage the resources and competence between the private traditional development sector and private sector? How do we use grants, for example, to de-risk social investments and crowding private capital? How does philanthropy play a more higher role in testing new models and new markets? Okay, so that in doing so we can de-risk and try new models. This is why we need to be thinking differently in the process. But it takes us to have a paradigm shift that's very different. And you know, sometimes I get surprised if you look at how philanthropy is, the source of philanthropy is different in Africa and in the US. I fundraise in both places extensively. In the US, your philanthropy comes from wealth. In Africa, it comes from business. You've got to make money before you can give it away, generally. And our African businessmen take a lot of risk in the private businesses, but they're not willing to take the same risk when they're doing philanthropy. They need to be leading. They need to be helping provide evidence for government to change policy and collaborate with government on that side. So I think we've got to be thinking about the redefined role as in the future of development on learn and thrive is how do we unlearn some of our old habits and relearn afresh in this new space. Very important to do so. But I think for me, strategically, if I look at the philanthropic space, is we have to play a more catalytic role going forward. We've got to take the higher risks that the private sector won't take. And if we do that, we can attract more capital in this space. Now, to Yvonne's point, we also need to think about the kind of solutions we're building. I think we've been too dependent on building models, for example, that are dependent on aid. Yet some of them market-based, financial sustainable models. We've got to be questioning some of the models we're delivering to deliver social impact. The poor are not shy to pay if you give them good service and affordable rates. But we always think that they just need free things, which is a wrong perception. Okay, this is where social enterprises come to play and play a very critical role in Africa. But we need a new paradigm and mindset shift.
I'd like to, Maurice, I'd like to make a couple of comments just based on what Frank is saying,
Right.
if that's okay. So I agree with a lot of those things. I think really looking more specifically at the financing solution, we need to leverage the fintech companies more, because the money is available and can be harnessed in, but they're the best positioned. And some of the things that Prof mentioned in terms of using data analytics as a way to solve lending behavior, more details and analytics of any kind of income or financial information they have versus audited accounts, etc., and even just better understanding of their business. These things are all being done, at least in Nigeria, in Kenya, and in South Africa today. The fintech companies are doing them. And what we need to do, but it's about the scale. And the fintech companies are doing them based on the money that they have. And this is where, just to Frank's point about strategic alliances, is how do we then say, whether it's grant money that the non-commercial NGO sector leads in terms of finding those sources of grant money, funding them in a very directed way through the fintech companies, partnering with organizations, whether it's Development Bank of Nigeria or any of those other institutions. But I think the paradigm shift, one of the most important paradigm shifts that I think we need to really consider is, if we continue to look at the commercial banking platform as the only solution for funneling the money through to SMEs, I'm concerned that we will struggle with the results. And then the other thing I wanted to say is financial literacy for this sector is one of the most important things that we can do. ACTS Foundation supports it very broadly. Some of the grant money that you give my foundation, Adara Foundation, we spend a lot of it on that in terms of giving financial literacy, because people need to know how to use money. They need to know how to build businesses. Because one of the other challenges we have, looking at the US-Nigeria comparison, is in Nigeria and in Africa, we have a very small, relatively small and relatively shallow private sector, given how much economic activity we need to have to engage. It's growing every day. That's great news, and especially with these new companies coming up. But I want us to sit back and imagine what would happen with a very concerted collective effort in that SME, MSME space. How many more Flutter Waves and Andelas, or even not even just the technology space companies, but right across the board, could be created in the next 5 years if we change the way that we look at these sectors, and if we change the way that we equip people to deal with these sectors.
The angle of the interlinkage between your input and where Frank landed, especially when Frank mentioned the fact that the base of the pyramid that seems to have been, consistently ignored in the scheme of things will buy value if, it is positioned to them in the right way. They will naturally not look away from value. And I do hear you that you talk about scalability, you talk about the involvement of the fintech. I'm going to wrap that up and pose this question to Prof to talk a bit about, maybe less about this episode of MSMEs. I want Prof to leverage his experience to talk about the synergy of strengthening governance across institutions. Talk about an efficient private sector, which is critical to accelerating development, that we talk about socioeconomic development in Africa. Mobilize civil societies. How generally, Prof, do you think that leaders across sectors can work together to attain efficient governance that lack so much, and by extension, infrastructural resilience? Over to you, Prof.
Well, thank you, Maurice. That's a very loaded question, which I will try to unpack. Let me unpack this the best way I can. So, first and foremost, in terms of the connection between government and private sector, I think there should be more coordination in stakeholder management. So, oftentimes, regulatory headwinds come down from nowhere, it seems. And all of a sudden, companies, industries begin to react and respond accordingly. Now, in my mind, for example, we talked about fintechs being a tool to make sure credit is being accessed by MSMEs or anyone in particular. Here's the challenge. In Nigeria, regulatory headwinds are actually preventing the proliferation of fintechs playing out. And that's because there's interest in the game. So right now, the central bank has put a sandbox where they can monitor and study how they operate and so on before they are allowed to now play. But the truth of the matter is this. When you think about government, we often look at government as if it's an isolated body or an entity. Believe it or not, we are all part of government in some way, shape, or form. When we have stakeholder interactions, we are now allowed to now put squarely and frontally the questions that are burning to our respective enterprises. Now, Frank spoke well, and Yvonne spoke well on saying that, if you like, these types of grants and endowments typically come from wealthy, affluent people and companies. In Nigeria and in lots of African countries, it tends to come from mainly businesses. Not to say it doesn't come from wealthy individuals, but predominantly come from businesses. Because as Frank mentioned squarely, you have to make money in order to be able to do all these things, create foundations, create some sort of legacy. But in the end, in order to have a coordinated approach, we have to have, in my mind, a stakeholder forum where we agree and follow through on actions. Oftentimes, what I've seen in these of interaction is we come to meetings, we speak a great deal, and it's over. It dies. Then you hear something later come up and say, oh, this is the outcome of this interaction. I'm like, hold up. We never actually drilled down and to debate these issues. Why is this now the new regulation without approaches? However, I'm not saying it's in all instances, but this is predominantly what we've seen. Generally speaking, in terms of providing access to finance, right? I don't believe we can do anything else but to create the level of trust, because there's a trust deficit in the system all over Africa, forget Nigeria, all over Africa. There's a trust deficit. And because of that trust deficit, we have instances. I'm sorry? Yes. And because of this instance, you have situations whereby you're already seen to be a bad guy. Let me give you a personal approach. So I go to a tourist island and I show my Nigerian passport. And all of a sudden, the suspicion come to the side and so on. And I'm like, I smile. and I suddenly pull out my American passport, then they back away. Like all of a sudden, I'm Mr. Untouchable. And I find it hilarious because this is an African country I went to. Why are you suspecting me now? So in Africa, we are suspicious of ourselves. That's why intra-regional trade is actually low. If it wasn't low, I would imagine we can trade amongst ourselves and forget about, because we have enough resources to grow Africa without going outside of Africa, quite frankly. But because we are all seeking the mighty dollar, we keep on chasing the mighty dollar or pound or euro, as the case may be, any type of reserve currency. But let's go back to the trust dynamic. If we can agree on trust and using these types of analytics helps us glean insights into the characteristics of the individuals we're dealing with. At least that's the first step into building trust. Seeing a repayment and banks or fintechs and financiers rewarding repayments as a way of saying, hey, I can now trust you, take more funds without asking for an arm and a leg or my coffin. Stop this nonsense. What's important above everything else is this. We have a credit system in Nigeria, and credit systems are growing all over African countries. I know in Ghana, I know in Kenya, Ethiopia, they all have these systems. In my mind, I go back to the M-Pesa of Kenya. M-Pesa has made Kenyans wealthy. Payment systems opened up vibrancy in commerce. In Nigeria, the regulatory environment has prevented these types of payment systems to grow. Not to say we don't have Flutterwave and Ease Transact and so on, but the point still remains. We have regulatory headwinds stifling innovation and growth in the real economy. As a result of that, it is in my humble view that more stakeholder interaction with government needs to play out, more influential people need to speak up, and finally, and last but not least, do not wait on government to solve your problems. Forget the government for a second and focus on what you can do internally with the partnerships you formed with NGOs, with other business-minded people, and scale. Once you scale and you make a degree of impact, I guarantee you the government will come knocking. They always do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Nana. That was quite deep and really valuable to this conversation. I do hear you quite clearly. The collaterals, instead of the institutions to reward trust and integrity and money being paid back, they kind of look away, and that only just lessens the opportunity to scale all of this kind of opportunities in the market. There isn't enough dedication to that possibility, to the areas that are actually working, and it's not been responded to, in an active way. I think looking back into that will be quite useful, like you mentioned. So Yvonne, I'm going to throw this last question to you before I go back to Fran to finalize. And it's on the financial inclusion that you talked to earlier. I do quite believe in it as well, especially for the base of the pyramid. More and more financial inclusion, but also using some of cross perspective to say that it doesn't even end in this financial inclusion. People need to get more involved, and the financiers need to get more responsible and more responsive to some of the positive, to the small positive responses that some of this market deliver to them. But I'm going to ask you, Yvonne, to look at the case as it is. A COVID-19 era, a COVID-19 period that the world is battling now, and that Africa also is still saddled with. Again, hearing what Frank says, let's agree to fail forward. Let's leverage the crisis. COVID-19, as we all agree here, is a pressing backdrop for the importance of improvement, but not just improvement across blocks. We're talking about improvements in the nitty-gritty, in operational processes of all of these development areas that we talk about, what do you think organizations can maximize and leverage? Talk about technology, talk about digital tools for this socioeconomic development that Africa requires. Over to you, Yvonne.
Okay, you should be on now. We can see you.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Morris, can you hear me? Is Morris there? Because she was asking me the question and I literally got cut off while she was asking me the question. So I need her to repeat the question, please.
Hi. Well, these things happen. Internet challenges across the world. We are hoping that we can still get our moderator back. But in the meantime, we're seeing your questions. We want to let you know that these questions will be responded to on our social media platforms at ActFoundation_ on Instagram and on Facebook at ActFoundation_. It will be put in the chat so that you can follow us and see the responses. Over to Madam Moderator. We're rounding off right now. We're running out of time. Back to you.
Inclusion to look at the angle that I want you to regard this question. And still about the situation at hand right now. The fact that the world, including Africa, is saddled with the COVID-19 situation as a pressing backdrop for the importance of improvement. Not only improvements across the blocks of development areas, but the operational processes. My question to you, in your experience, is that what can organizations maximize in terms of technology, in terms of digital tools, for the socioeconomic development that Africa requires?
Yeah, so let me
Frank, are you back with us?
Yes, we can see him.
Frank, are you back?
Yes.
Okay. So Frank, I know you were attempting to address this question because of the technical glitch. I've taken it back to Yvonne, so Yvonne will be addressing the question. Over to you.
So let me answer the question by starting with a very quick story. As part of the COVID crisis, what we found was that we discovered more and more women who had no income at all and were suffering some pretty dire social economic consequences for that. And so what we did was set up a trade credit program where we this is we being Adara Foundation, using money, I must stress, provided, part of that financial support came from ACT Foundation. And so what we did was say, there were supply chain issues as a part of COVID. We had these increasing number of women that we found that were that more and more had no income and had these dire situations. So we said, fine. And FMCGs were struggling to get their products across the country. And therefore, we approached the FMCGs, acquired the product off them at favorable discounted rates, distributed it to the women in areas like Ajegule, Shomolu, Mushi, and other areas in Lagos that we started. And with those women, we distributed the product to them at no credit interest, and then they sell it through a community-based approach. We work with the local government chairman. We work with the ballets in the communities, and we have collectors who act more like guardians, consultants, speak to the women. How are you doing? How's everything going? And of course, they collect the money. So we're very kind to the point of collecting the cash. At that point, we're very hard. Bring the money back, and we then include all of the women in making sure that the money comes back into the system. And one of the things we were able to do
was lent in the first place. How do you sustain that? What is the motivating factor to continue?
So the reason we sustain it is because our collection rate is actually to date is about 95%. We have one single lady who defaulted by about 112,000 naira, but for the most part, they've paid back. They've paid back because we've met them at their point of need. We've educated them about managing finance. We've included them in the financial system. Yes, we're able to plug that in. The part of the money that ACT Foundation gave us enabled us to implement a technology solution provided by iRecharge, where we have a database of all these women, we have a database of all the products, and importantly, and so we have the reporting capabilities. At any point in time, we can see how many women are involved, what products we have, what's moving, what's not moving, but most importantly, the ability for them to pay any means necessary. So each woman has or each marketer, I should say, because we will expand it to other marketers as well, has a unique identifier which they can use to process payments, either to the POS person at the corner, at the ATM, on their phone, they go into the bank. And this payment collection process means we're less vulnerable to women sitting on money. We collect money weekly as well. So I'm being quite specific about some of the solutions, and I'm not. And I don't for one second pretend that Adara Foundation are the thinking about life in this very different way. And I wanted to use this example to show in detail to people on this call some of the real work that ACT Foundation is doing. It is touching lives. It is going in and changing. And some of these women are earning money that they have never seen in their lives before.
Wow.
And to the point, we understand that constituency, and you hold them accountable, and don't make it difficult for them to pay. So this is the other thing. If we have all these processes and systems that cost too much and prohibit the women from paying because it's just too expensive, those are some of the challenges that we've tried to address through this sort of system. And the most important, one of the other most important elements of it is really explaining to the women how they use money, and making and creating a collective consequence for those who do not apply the money well or who do not return the monies as planned. We continue to expand that program, and I think it shows how the necessity for financial inclusion. It's not the grants or any of this money or anything else. When we see people who are very innovative and very entrepreneurial across Africa. And men, women, everybody, very entrepreneurial and creative society. When we see these people and we assume that because they have a good idea, they understand business or that they understand how to manage money. And I think these are some of the things, again, as a collective, because at the back of my mind, all these solutions are interesting. Our trade credit program is interesting, but guess what? At this point, it doesn't have scale. It needs to be adopted by many, many more institutions. We need to go across our country, Nigeria, across
totally
Africa,
agree
with
you.
something that
I will have
works.
to stop you
And
there. Thank you so much for this perspective. I totally agree with you. Along with other solutions that Prof had mentioned and Frank had gracefully talked to, the organizers have asked us to stop right there and go into questions. So allow the audience also have the opportunity to ask questions and have us address it. So, Frank, please, me, I can ask you that extended question. Organizers, ACT, over to you. Where do we fetch the questions?
Madam Moderator, if you can hear me, we will field the response to the questions on our social media
So I have
page,
this
please, just
question.
because we've run out of time for this right here. So we will, behind the scenes, converse with you, our panelists, to get the right responses and project them on our social media pages. I would like to say thank you to our moderator and our panelists for an amazing, robust, lively conversation. I would also like to say thank you to every one of you for the comments in the chats, for the questions that will be responded to on social media, for your participation in the conversation, and for your learnings that you are taking away. Please don't forget to share your learning points on your social media platforms. Let the world know that you are part of the conversation at our 5th annual Breakfast Dialogue, and use the hashtags ActBFD2021 and hashtag CIC2021 so we can track your comments and also repost them and let the world know what is going on. Progress is being made, and we need to let the world know. So in the chat, please say thank you to our moderator, say thank you to all our panelists, put the clap signs, put the thank you signs. They have done an amazing job. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to make this work this year. This is still reimagining the future of development. Learn, adjust, thrive. A lot has been said about this, and we will move on to other features. Thank you once again. A major feature of our Breakfast Dialogue, which shall be unveiled tomorrow, is the Changemakers Innovation Challenge. ACT Foundation conceived this challenge in 2019 as a response to the impressive work of community, nonprofits, and social enterprises in Africa who are leveraging technology and digital tools to create social change in hard-to-reach communities like villages, rural areas, and also vulnerable communities. We shall be announcing the winners of this year's challenge tomorrow. These people we shall provide to them funding and technical support, enabling them to scale up impact within the community where they presently work and beyond. So please stay tuned. Later during today's event, you will have the opportunity to meet with some of our partners, including Program Migration and Diaspora, GIZ Nigeria, the Bulb Africa, Sage Foundation, and the Nigerian Network of Non-Governmental Organizations. Through our interactive booth, you will learn more about their program offerings, so please stick around for that. Now, we have a message from our partner, Program Migration and Diaspora, PMD, GIZ Nigeria. Watch the video with us. welcome, Larry. Faith, you're not supposed to be doing two roles. Welcome back. We apologize sincerely for that glitch. You know, when you get on a plane during the briefing before the takeoff, one of the things we're told is to wear your mask before helping others. Meaning, if you're not well, up and running, you really can't help anybody else. Hence, today, we have a session on wellness titled Centering Self, Prioritizing Well-Being for Change Makers. If you are a change maker, it is time to prioritize your well-being. Receive with me our distinguished speaker for this discussion on wellness, the chief catalyst at Olushola Lanre Coaching Academy, the one and the only Lanre Olushola. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. We are so honored to have you here with us. Please put in the chat. Welcome to the catalyst, Mr. Lanre Olushola. Are we ready to take our notes and learn from him about how to center ourselves, prioritizing well-being for change makers? Hi.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear, sir.
If anyone can hear me, just indicate in the chat room that you can hear me and you can see me.
We hear you.
Fantastic. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm the catalyst, and my name is Lanre Olushola. So, am I live? Am I speaking live to everyone? I can't see anyone. I can't seem to hear anyone, but I'll just go on. Right. Okay. So, thank you very much for this opportunity. I've got the better part of 20 minutes to speak on the subject matter that I've been given. And the topic of my discussion is centered around, self and how to prioritize your well-being as a change maker. And so when we talk about centering self and when we talk about prioritizing well-being, what does that really mean to any one of us? And so I'll be, taking us through some questions. I'll be provoking some of our thoughts in the next 20 minutes. So let me first of all ask, what does self mean to you? So I'd like a few people to give me some responses in the chat room. So when we talk about, centering self, when we talk about prioritizing your well-being, let's start with self. What does it mean to you? Quickly, if I can have a few people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people respond in the chat room. What does self, the concept of self, what does it mean to you? Quickly. Because if we do not understand the concept of self, then how do we center self? And what is it about self that we are trying to center? So self, thank you very much. Self means me. Yeah. What else? What else? What does self mean to you? Quickly. What does self mean to you? I'll take 3 more people quickly. It means your body. Yes. What else? What does self mean? Quickly. What does self mean? It means the body. It means me. Yeah. What else? What else? All right. I want to speak to self, from a perspective of wholeness. When we talk well-being, what we're really talking about is looking at yourself wholly. When we talk about centering self, then we're talking about a perspective that considers the whole of you. And what is the whole of you? Number one, you have to recognize that you are a spirit, you have a soul, and you live in a body. And that construct, spirit, soul, body, is located in an environment to relate with other people. So when we talk about self, we're talking about a system that is situated in a system to relate with other systems within various other systems. So You, spirit, soul, body is a system. And that system is put in an environment, which is a system, so that you can relate with other systems, other spirit, souls, bodies in various environments. And so when we talk about centering self, we're talking about harmonizing your spirit, your soul, your body in your environment. And then that entire system of you, spirit, you, soul, you, and you, environment, relating with other systems. Now, when we talk about spirit, soul, right, I want to talk about a concept called the ego, the super ego, and the id. Now, according to Freud, right, in his psychoanalytic theory, it says that your id, your ID, is the primitive and instinctual part of your mind. Now, this part of your mind contains your pleasure desires, your feelings, your aggressive drives, and your hidden memories. So we call that your soul essence. Now, your super ego, right, operates as a moral conscience. We call that your spiritual essence. And then your ego is your flesh. It's your conscious being. Your ego is the realistic part of you that tries to mediate between your id and your super ego. So when we are talking about centering self, we're talking about much more than your goals. We're talking about much more than your desires. We're talking about much more than your aspirations. We're talking about looking at your life holistically. And when we talk about life, another question that I have for you is, what is life? Because the entirety of your being, the entire yourself, right, is to live life in harmony. So what is life? What does life really mean to you? Because if you do not understand the construct and the concept of self, and you do not understand the construct and the concept of life, you will not be able to center appropriately. Because everything that you are centering, right, should be about your life, should be about the life that you are living. So let me have a few people answer the question, what is life? What is life? What is life? Quickly, if I can have a few people also help answer that question, what is life? Awesome. Self is about individuality. So now we're asking, what is life? What is life? What is life? What is life? Quickly, what is life? Life is achieving all the goals that we've set out to achieve. So, from that definition, that tells me that life is about the future. I'm waiting for others. Somebody else says that life is purpose, right? Purpose in the now or in the future, right? So we're not clear whether it's a definitive for life being about purpose now or life being about purpose in the future. Somebody else says that life is a way of making impact in our environment. So somebody says that life is what you do. Wow, I love this. I love this definition. Let it keep coming. And note all those terms that I'm using. Some people have identified life as a construct of the future, right? It is about setting goals, about achieving something that you set out to achieve in the future. Somebody else says that life is purpose, but I'd like us to further break that down. Is it about purpose in the now or purpose in the future? Now, somebody else says that life is all that affects by our, wow, maybe you want to recontextualize that. Life is all that affects by being. I'm not sure I understand what that means, but I'll take the other one. Life is a way of making impact in our environment. So life is what you do, right? So that you can have something, right, called impact. Another person says that life is the essence of living. So life is being. Wow, I love this. Another person says life is a purpose about now that will affect the future. So life is now and tomorrow. I love that. I love that. So you will find that life, I like that, life is life. Wow. So what is the life that life is? I like that. Life is life. But what is the life that life is? So many of us see life from our own perspective. And so if somebody else tells you how to center self and how to find harmony with your life, they're going to be speaking to you from their own perspective of self. They're going to be speaking to you from their own perspective of life. But who truly knows what is? Who truly knows what self is? Who truly understands the concept of centering of self and living life in harmony? So life is what we choose, is a choice, is what we choose to do. Life is existence. Now, Boethius, one of the greatest philosophers of our time, says that in other living creatures, the ignorance of themselves is nature. In man, it's a vice. Let me take that again. Boethius says that in other living creatures, the ignorance of themselves is nature, but in man, it's a vice. It means that if dogs do what they do, right, we see it as that is what dogs do. When we go out into nature and we see bees doing what they do, we see ants do what they do, we see trees blossom and what they do, we say that is nature. But if man just acts abnormally, right? If man acts in a way that is not in tandem or in alignment with our man is wrong, that man, is not doing what we want them to do. And people will start to think and speak negatively or ill of you. Now, it is important from this quote that you know yourself. Now, they asked Socrates the secret of success, well-being, and harmony. And Socrates says, number one, know thyself. Number two, know thyself. Number three, know thyself. And they asked him, why the same answer three times? And Socrates says that if you do not know yourself, you cannot be the best version of yourself. So having spoken about self, having spoken about life, having spoken about, us knowing ourselves, let me give another quote by Francis Bacon. He says that it's a sad fate for a man to die, too well known by everyone else, but still unknown to himself, especially in this day of Instagram, in this day of Facebook, in this day of TikTok. Many people position themselves in a way that is not in alignment with their values, their beliefs, their ideologies, and their vision and mission in life. And so, are you living for yourself or are you living for other people? It will be absolutely impossible for you to center self and operate from a place of holistic well-being if you do not begin to answer these questions, if you not begin to master your spirit, your soul, your body, if you do not begin to understand the relationship between that entire system, spirit, soul, body, and the world system that is the environment that you find yourself in, and your relationships with other systems. So, let me summarize what I've said so far. Know yourself. Create harmony within yourself. Understand that you are not just physical. You are more than physical. 95% of every single thing that you do, every single decision that you make is made by your subconscious self. And your ego, your id, and your super ego reside in your subconscious. Know thyself. Know thyself. Know thyself. And as I begin to round up, because of time, let me quote again Socrates. Socrates says that an unexamined life is not worth living. An unexamined life is not worth living. When last did you do an audit of your life? And when we talk about an audit of life, right, let me share with you the 12 most critical elements of your life. If you want to center self, if you want to create wellness and well-being, if you want to find harmony, fulfillment, satisfaction, joy, prosperity, and peace, you've got to look at your life holistically, and you've got to prioritize every aspect of your life equally. What are the 12 most critical elements of your life? Number one is your health and well-being. I want you to look at your health and well-being, and I want you to quickly do an audit on a scale of 0 to 100, knowing that 0 is a terrible state of health and well-being, and 100 is an excellent state of health and well-being. I want you to rate your health and well-being on a scale of 0 to 100. Now, when we talk about health and well-being and wellness, we're talking about your spirit, spiritual, emotional, psychological, and physical health and well-being. So quickly, I want you to rate your health, well-being on a scale of 0 to 100. Quickly. Number two, the second most critical area of your life is your home and family. And when we talk about home and family, we're talking about, you know, your siblings, we're talking about your parents, we're talking about, you know, your own wife, your own husband, your own children, if you're married. I want you to rate the quality of your home and family on a scale of 0 to 100. 0 meaning that, you know, we have terrible dynamics in our family. We're dysfunctional. We're at loggerheads. We're unhappy. It's Siberia. I want you to rate the quality of your relationships and the dynamics in your home and family on a scale of 0 to 100. The third element that I want to look at is your relationships, your intimate relationship. So if you're married, it will be your marriage. I want you to rate the quality of your marriage on a scale of 0 to 100. 0 meaning traumatic and terrible. 100 meaning incredible and phenomenal. And if you're not married, if you have an intimate relationship, I want you to rate the quality. And for some people that have a situationship, right, you know, you're not yet in that desired exclusive relationship that we're talking about. So I'll be really, really interested to know what you rate yourself. So we've done health and well-being. We've done home and family. We've done your intimate relationships or your marriage. The fourth area of life that's very, very important is your finances. Your finances. Your financial independence, your financial expressions, your assets, your investments, your savings, your inflow, money. I want you to rate your finances on a scale of 0 to 100. Are you where you thought you should be by now, right? At this age with what you're doing, on a scale of 0 to 100, how fulfilled are you? How financially independent are you on a scale of 0 to 100? The fifth one is your level and quality of your self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-belief. I want you to rate your self-worth, your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and your self-belief on a scale of 0 to 100. Quickly. The sixth element is how much fun, recreation, and rest do you get? And what is the quality of fun, recreation, and rest that you get on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis? I want you to rate the quality of fun, recreation, and rest that you get on a scale of 0 to 100. Quickly. The seventh is your career or your business. What is the quality of output in terms of productivity and performance, in terms of fulfillment and satisfaction on your job? I want you to rate that on a scale of 0 to 100. 0 meaning I'm not fulfilled. I don't like my job. I'm frustrated at my job. I am not performing at the level that I'm meant to be performing. I'm not productive at the level that are meant to be productive. I want you to rate the quality of your work, your career, or your business on a scale of 0 to 100. The eighth one is your social networks and your friendships. I want you to rate the quality of your networks. You know, they say that your network determines your net worth. I want you to rate the quality of people that you have around you. Are they headed in the same direction as you are headed? Are they thinking like you are thinking? Do you have common values and beliefs? Quickly rate that on a scale of 0 to 100. And the ninth one is, have you discovered your purpose? Are you living for the solution that you were created to be? Are you solving the problems that you are wired to solve, right? Are you utilizing your gifts, your passion, and your essence appropriately? I want you to rate that on a scale of 0 to 100. Purpose, passion, influence, impact that you're making in society and around you on a scale of 0 to 100. Spirituality. If you lost everything, how secure would you feel? Right? That's the 10th one. Your level of security and spirituality. If you lost everything that you have today, how secure would you feel? And what is the quality of your relationship with the Almighty, with divinity, right? What is your relationship with your spirit, your soul? On a scale of 0 to 100, do you have a quality relationship with your subconscious? Does your spirit have a quality relationship, with, with God and the Almighty? I want you to rate that on a scale of 0 to 100. How secure are you in your spirituality, right? And in your relationship with the divine? On a scale of 0 to 100, the 11th, which is your overall achievement and attainment of your goals to date. I want you to rate that. Are you where you thought you should be by now in terms of your overall achievements and your overall attainments? Quickly, on a scale of 0 to 100. And the last one is your level of contentment, happiness, and peace. I want you to rate your level of contentment, happiness, and peace on a scale of 0 to 100. Now, quickly look at those numbers and ask yourself, where do you want to be within the next 1 year? When we're talking about centering self, when we're talking about well-being, when we're talking about harmony, when we're talking about fulfillment and contentment, right? It's about looking at your life holistically and identifying, right, where you have been prioritizing your time and your energy and how it has been affecting areas of your life. And so for some people that prioritize work, their home and family will suffer. For other people that prioritize just hanging with their friends and building networks, right, their relationship with their intimate partners will suffer. For some people that, have not found, the right dynamics between their self-worth, self-esteem, and self-belief, they will struggle to succeed and attain consistently. Now, when we talk about centering self, right, let me round up and say that center spirit, soul, body, center ego, super ego, and id, center every of these 12 critical dimensions of your life. Create harmony. And when you do begin the journey towards creating harmony, you would find fulfillment. You would find satisfaction. You would find peace. And therein lies your wellness and your well-being. Thank you very much. My time is done. If anybody has any questions, you may ask at this time. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely amazing. Mr. Larry Olushola,
If
this
you got
is
any
just
questions,
amazing.
you may
sir?
ask
If
now.
You can, please say that you can.
Can anyone hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Okay. 12 amazing questions, please put your thank yous. In fact, write blown away, blown away, right? Blown away in the chats, because I mean, the responses to these 12 questions are eye-opening even for me. I'm sure they are for you. Blown away, yes, I'm seeing your responses now, blown away. Are you really writing your honest responses to these questions? I can imagine that just like me, in responding, you can see where you are so that we can begin to center self. Thank you so much to the catalyst, Mr. Lanre Olushola, for such a life-changing session. Amazing. Please share these questions. If you don't mind, share these questions on your social media pages. Tell your friends and family what you've taken away from this and help somebody else begin the journey to self-centering. Use our hashtags, hashtag ActBFD2021, hashtag CIC2021, and tag us at ActFoundation_ on Facebook and on Instagram so that we can also try to repost some of the posts that we see. We need more change makers, better centered. And of course, we would also put up the links to some of our speakers so that you can follow them on social media platforms as well, get into some of their programs and their courses so that we can all be much better for the Nigeria of our dreams, for the countries of our dreams, for the Africa of our dreams, so that we fulfill the reimagining of the future of development. We can learn, adjust, and thrive. We will now move on to a special interactive session with 4 of our partners this year: Program Migration and Diaspora, GIZ Nigeria, the Bulb Africa, Sage Foundation, and the Nigerian Network of Non-Governmental Organizations. Each partner shall have or has a specific booth during this breakout session, which we're about to go into. You can choose to enter any one of them so you hear more about the organization and their program offerings. We would ask you to leave this meeting and return to the lobby to join the interactive sessions at the partner booths. Once you enter the meeting, you can choose any breakout room of your choice and meet the respective partners. We'll be here to guide if need be. See you all soon as we return for the panel session after this. The breakout rooms will happen now. You would see the command come up on screen. So please click on the breakout session of your choice so that you see the offerings of our partners and you can participate in the interactive session. Just stay with us and take a look at the screen now as the directions will come up.
The Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation is a grant-making organization established in 2016 to
Somebody's asking, how do we return to the lobby? Many of us are asking how we find our way back to the lobby. If you're on a laptop or a desktop, look at the bottom of your screen. You will see the icon for the lobby. That was that very first page you came into when you clicked on the link at the beginning of the program. You'll see the lobby open. It's like the home page. Call it the home page. Scroll and you will see the access to the breakout sessions now. If you're on mobile, it's the same thing. Go back to like the app, to the home page, and you will see the link to the breakout sessions. Take a look. We're seeing the numbers reduce, so we know people are leaving. So check again, check again. You know how we do these things. Just keep checking. Yes, the numbers are dropping, so people are moving to breakout session. Refresh. Someone says no audio. On mute. We can't hear you. There's no audio. I am still mute. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Now, fantastic. Our apologies for that. I was saying that go to the bottom of your screen. If you're on a laptop or a desktop, you will see the icon for what looks like the home page. That's what we are calling the lobby, the home page. Click on it, and it will take you to see all the icons you can click on and go to the interactive session, the breakout session. If you're on mobile as well, it's like you're returning to the homepage of your app. Can you see it? The numbers are dropping, so it means people are moving. If you can see it, please click on that homepage, which we call the lobby. Go in there, and it will show you the link to the interactive sessions at the booths. Yes, numbers are dropping, so I think people are leaving. Thank you for your cooperation. The master classes will continue on that platform from there. Don't worry, we're making this work, right? We are making this work together. This is still the 5th annual breakfast organized by ACT Foundation. The lobby is the home page. It may not be called lobby on your device. You'll see that the home page, where you were before when you just clicked the link to the program at the very beginning, that lobby, it's like you're going back there. If you like, you can log out completely on this device and log back on, and you will land on the lobby. How about that? Can we try that? You can log off, log on again, and you will be in the lobby. Numbers are dropping. People are finding the lobby. Yay. All right. We'll see you in the breakout sessions right away.